and myself to the stream. As I said, welcome to our third night of our series where we are discussing the role of the Black church in communities of race, crime, economic, educational, and job disparities. Um, I've invited a few people tonight. I see Ms. McPherson is already here. Welcome. How are you doing tonight?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Uh, yes, you volunteered to come back on. We didn't, so I guess we didn't cheat you too much the first time. Had a few glitches in there, but uh, I think a lot of people maybe misconstrued um, my idea of the Black church. Um, Mainly because when I grew up, the Black church was the community. It wasn't just a building that a lot of predominantly black people went to on Sunday. It was a little more than that. So, unfortunately, I've reached out to a lot of ministers and people of different denominations, but it kind of ends up that maybe I ask too hard of questions, or I'm not sure. But anyway, you'll find that most of the people that are here are just regular people like you and I, and there's not a lot of clergy involved, and not a lot of other political people involved. So I see Mr. Scott is in. Mr. Scott, how are you doing this evening?
Pretty good, James. Thanks a lot.
Uh, yes, we're kind of continuing our discussion, and as I was saying, it seems that I get a lot of lay people, but I don't get a lot of so-called church people and ministers and leaders themselves. Uh, so I didn't know whether it was because of the sort of hard questions I ask, or Jennifer, maybe it was my gruff exterior. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think I don't know why they wouldn't want to defend their position. I mean, their position is faith, and what their position is they would like to share the good news. That's the message that I always grew up with in the church, that they want to share the good news. And in the church, like in any other institution, you have people that really are in this thing because they believe it, because they are in. But then you have other people that, it's a fashion. It's something that they have to show up and say, well, I go to this church but there's a whole other thing of spirituality, I believe, in faith. So to me, it's kind of surprising that because spreading the good news and coming on the air and spreading it anywhere from the top of the mountaintop, as they used to say, is what I would think that their mission is. So that's kind of surprising, Jane,
Uh,
to me.
Jennifer, is there only one church in your city? I mean,
Oh
uh,
no.
every time that I've ever seen, anything from that particular area, I've only seen one church.
Mm. Yeah, no, there's plenty of churches. Plenty.
Are there plenty of churches, or are there plenty of congregations?
Both.
I mean, because I think there's a difference between the two. What about you? I mean, every church uh, is is not a church.
Hmm.
And every congregation is not necessarily a congregation. And by that I mean, um, as Mr. Scott was saying, a lot of people go to that building to be seen. they don't really care about the message that's inside, but as long as all my friends know that I showed up, and that to me that's a building. A congregation is where people all go and to worship, and they all have a common goal. Whether the pastor is in a $1,000 suit or a pair of coveralls.
Well, could I ask your guest, James, young
Yeah,
lady,
go ahead.
what area are you in, and what area are you? Is this in the California, San Diego area, or?
Well, where I live in sort of a mixed area. So, but where I grew up, as I said, I'm a preacher's kid, and I kind of grew up like you, where everybody came to church. We had a Baptist church, and everybody knew each other's grandma, and the deacon board and the trustee board, and I don't even know, sadly, I don't even know if churches still had the same structure anymore.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask the young lady. I mean, what are you also in the San Diego, California area, or what area do you reside?
No, I'm in St. Paul, Minnesota.
Oh, you're in St. Paul. You're up here with me.
Hmm.
So, see, I used to be in the music ministry at Pilgrim Baptist Church.
Yeah.
And I was there for about 3 years, and I was brought in because I had played the bass with this group, the Sounds of Blackness, that everybody up here has heard about.
Hmm.
And so the director was the choir director at Pilgrim at the time, and they had some turnover, and I went and played there in their choir for like 3 years. And what I gathered about, see, that's one of the actually oldest churches in the Twin Cities area.
Yeah.
And it may be the oldest one in St. Paul as far as a black church, because I know when I was there, they celebrated the 150-year anniversary and told a story. But what I noticed is they didn't have much of a youth presence in that church. They didn't have much of a youth uh, choir, or it was really mainly the old guard of people were still hanging on and holding on to the church and keeping it going. Um, are you familiar at all with Pilgrim?
Yeah, I know about
Just
Pilgrim.
as an example, not specifically, but
Mhm.
but that
Yeah,
whole
I grew up around that area, in that
but that
area.
whole idea of youth in the church. What is your observations on that?
I don't know. Like I grew up Catholic, so we went to St. Peter Claver.
And
Um,
and that's another thing about St. Paul that I realized. St. Peter Claver has been as prominent in that black community as any of the Baptist churches. Matter
mhm.
of fact, Father Denzel Carty, who was just an emeritus, I guess you call him. I'm not familiar with Catholic, and a lot of my friends went to St. Peter Claver. I know a lot of people that went there, but they have a real foothold in the black community as a Catholic church.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't, I mean, I'm telling you, the pillars of that community, there's as many Catholic as there was the Baptist, as there. Um,
Now, see, where I grew up in Cleveland, my sisters and brothers all went to a Catholic school, and they
yeah,
attended St. Adelbert's. And even now, at their age, they still have the reunions and the neighborhood get-togethers and the cookouts, even more so than the Baptist church and the old
yeah,
African Methodist church. You know,
that's
uh,
a great observation. Yeah,
Of course, I wasn't allowed in Catholic school for a bunch of different reasons, even But anyway, uh, you know,
one of my sons graduated from probably the best Catholic. Well, there'll be arguments because you have Minneapolis, like Cretan, and then you'll have in Minneapolis, you have De La Salle, and that's where my son went to De La Salle, where he was captain of the tennis team, De La Salle's top student, Catholic school.
We're now joined by Dr. Casey. Dr. Casey, before we actually get into the questions, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I am Dr. Casey. I am a certified life coach. I have been in the realm of what I do for about 8 to 10 years. But I wrote my first book, an autobiography called It's My Time in 2006. I am a disabled veteran. I served 3 years in the Army. I did about 4 months in Iraq during wartime. And I am now a mom and just trying to help influence the world as much as possible.
Now, Dr. Casey presented an interesting argument. She asked me if she was qualified to come and talk about the black church, which once again kind of gets me back to the original question of the church, because as I said, to me, the church is made up of people. It's you don't have to be qualified to go to church. You don't have to be qualified, or you shouldn't have to be. You know, going to church you shouldn't. Everyone should be a part of the church if that's your reasoning. And the reason why I invited you, Dr. Casey, is because I feel that anyone that knows anything about Dr. Martin Luther King, Reverend Abernathy, John Q. Lewis, I believe anyone like that is qualified because we all came up from that basic core, either our parents or our grandparents. Most of us heard or read about those type of experiences. So I think that you are more than qualified.
Well, I I was in church for about 6 years, although I wasn't raised in church. And for the last 8 years, I've been studying spirituality and everything about religion and human development.
Uh, Jennifer, are you still a practicing Catholic, if I may ask?
um, no, but I do take, what I'm saying? I still believe in some of their beliefs. Like, I still practice a lot of what they believe in. So, especially during Lent season.
Uh, Doctor, do you find that there is as much relevance in the black community that, well, the church has that much relevance as it, say, when you were growing up as compared to now and the 6 or 8 years that you spent in organized religion?
I believe that the structure of conditioning that church is mandatory to get to know God is a little confusing for people because it doesn't take church to have a relationship with God. And oftentimes people replace their relationship with God with religion or church instead of coming to their own understanding of who God is and building that relationship.
Now, you see, on that end, Doctor, being a veteran, and especially a combat vet, I served 3 tours in Vietnam. Fortunately, I never. I mean, I have my CBI, and all that, but um, I think that veterans get to understand that you don't need that building to build that relationship with God. The strongest bond that I've built with uh, my spiritual being was, of course, in the middle of a firefight. But after that, I found out that I can be on my knees anywhere. I do not have to necessarily need someone to stand over me and put their hands on me in order for them to pass on a blessing. I feel that I have somewhat of a direct connection. If you want to put it in modern terms, I feel that I could put him on speed dial at any time. You know,
Well,
and,
and that's
and
what it should be, but oftentimes that is a lot of people equate their relationship with God to being at church on whatever specific day. I remember I had a friend, I have a friend rather, and I spoke to her once because she felt like the only place that she could feel God's presence was at church. And I had to explain to her that you should be able to create God's presence in your home. Your home should be your first sanctuary. That should be your first place where you feel peace and that connection. And if it's not there, you won't really feel it anywhere else. You're just going for the excitement and the amusement of being entertained by what church gives versus the actual connection.
What do you think about that, Mr. Scott?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think it's about a faith type of thing, and I'll say that because my grandmother being Talladega, Alabama, just choir director, my mom being the choir director, pianist, and they're telling me things like we made a way when there wasn't no way down south. When they would go to churches and the dirt floor in the churches. But there's one thing that really kind of gets me about spirituality is I had an uncle that was in the service, and he was in World War II, and he was, oh gosh, I would talk to him every Christmas about Thanksgiving. He's 90 some years old, and he would tell me he was out doing a maneuver somewhere in the wintertime, somewhere, and he got away from the barracks and he got lost. And the night came and it was cold, and it was like he was getting dehydrated and whatever you get when you're cold and you're sweating and snow. And so when
Probably
he was in the
hypothermia.
hypothermia, and so when he was in the barracks every day, they would have dinner, he said, and he would sit there and read his Bible every day. The rest of the guys over there throwing dice, drinking, playing cards, blah, blah, blah. And so there was a lot of different guys there, a lot of some racist guys from the South. I mean, there was a lot of different guys in their unit. And so he was lost that night and he could not get back to the barracks. He couldn't know what was going on. And so at that night, he said you couldn't open the light or anything to know where the enemy was. But he said there was a guy in there that he would never thought anything about him. This guy would be gambling, drinking. My uncle's there reading the Bible. He said, this guy Adolf is out there in the woods. We got to find Adolf. Open that door so that he can see that light. And they say, you can get court-martialed if you do that. You can't do it. But this man opened this door so that Adolf, because he was so used to seeing him sitting there reading his Bible every day. And so I think faith in these things as you go through life, they will hit you many different ways. And I always believe that the church continues to try, just like in life. All of a sudden, we get a 45 as a president. Oh my God, how in the world could this happen? But we have to work around that. And I think that our people have been so resilient in doing that that I still have hope for us. I really do. And I really think the spirituality really got our ancestors through what they went through because we'll never know that. Because of them, we don't have to experience that.
Mm,
They did that. We don't have to go
I
through
don't.
that anymore.
Uh,
Well,
Mr.
we don't
Go
have
ahead.
to go through what they went through. They're not going to cut my feet off if I try to go no. They're not going to. I mean, yes, it's
Do you really believe that, Mr. Scott? Because out here in California, within the last 5 years, well, no, within the last 2 years, we have had 5 black men decorating trees out here, and it wasn't Christmas. And all of them committed suicide. Come on now, black man on the
I,
end of a road committing suicide. I'm, I'm just saying. Maybe it's safer where you live at, but go ahead,
it,
Doctor.
it I don't believe that it's safer anywhere. I don't think that. I think that religion has always been a pacifier of a sense. When you think, if you look at the history, I know what grandmama and mama and everybody in our ancestry was taught to believe in religion, but you got to remember it was the Bible Belt. It wasn't the Bible gathering come to hither, like we wanted just to love you. It was the belt, and the same way that that Bible belt was used then to kind of browbeat and make you think less and make you feel less is the same way in a lot of cases that it is now. But it's not one religion. It's just not Christianity. It's every religion that forces you to experience your spiritual walk based on somebody else's experience, because I can never be Jesus. I can never be like Jesus. We got two different, totally different purposes. I don't want to sacrifice my life like Jesus because that's not what I believe that I was put on earth for. But because of tradition, and religion and conditioning, I mean, if you think about, that was the only thing that we were allowed to read in that time. So although we may not technically be getting our feet sliced off for doing things, there are other subconscious things that definitely do just as bad damage when you tear down the inner workings and spirituality of a person.
And I
Facts.
think, and they're going to be there. Those things are going to be there. They're not going to stop. They're not going to stop. And we have to. I mean, the more that we stick together, that's what we can do. I
the
mean, let's
Bi- the
talk
the
about.
church doesn't allow you to stick together. The church is going to tell you that anybody that doesn't do what you do the way you do it, there's something is wrong with them.
Yeah,
They're not going to heaven. They're not this and they're not that. And that's just not even God. God, I mean, like
very
if you
true.
think, if you're even looking at the Bible in itself, there were people that done all manners of evil things and was still God's chosen, after God's own heart and all of that. So the difference between religion and the Bible is vast, because religion holds you to a standard that is man-made. And then
Mm-hmm.
if you don't live up to this standard that somebody made up, then something is wrong with you, versus accepting everybody regardless.
Exactly. And see, that's the way I feel about church too. It's like the church is the building where you go. The congregation is the people. But I don't necessarily think you have to go to church every week. I believe that church is necessary to a point because it's fellowship. And that's what we need, is the fellowship and the coming together. You could talk directly to God. And that's one thing that, I wasn't raised as a child. I wasn't raised to do that because, I was raised Catholic. You had to say Hail Marys and all that stuff. So when I became a teenager and somebody introduced me to an apostolic church, I was like, wow, there's a whole nother way you could talk to God. I don't need nobody else. So then, that helped me because, my father had just passed away, like right before I started going to church. And then, I end up, sticking with this church and getting baptized and getting filled with the Holy Ghost and going on being a youth leader, Sunday school teacher, and all that. And I went to Bible college, and that kind of helped me figure out what I wanted to be, because I always wanted to be a pastor's wife. But then I found out that women pastor too,
Mhm.
so that's something, that helped me have a peace of mind and kept me calm in the times where I needed it. Which, if I would have just been Catholic my whole life, I don't think it would have been the same, because you don't always have somebody there to talk to God when you need it. So that's just one thing. And then, like, as far as like black people, like you were saying, it's all about reading the Bible, and half the Bible is missing, but we're not taught that in church. So it's like, how do you have a real relationship in a church when, one, you're not allowed to have a direct relationship with God? So when you go through the some religions, you're just like a sheep because you have to believe what is taught to
Whatever
you.
they tell you.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes you're not allowed to go and study other religions or anything else. But if you really went and studied the history of religions, it will really, it's kind of disappointing, because you're taught to believe all of these things that when you look at the history, the Bible isn't even half of what God can do. It's just a very minimal instruction manual of the experiences that you can have, but you
Mhm.
can create whatever experience.
Well, if I could just chime in one thing, in this discussion about the Bible as a book. Um, these people spam.
I
And
normally
what,
let my
what, what
phone
I
go dead,
say,
Mr. Scott.
what I say about the Bible is I love the Bible as a book,
Mhm.
and I'll say that I love it because it's written by people that lived before us. Okay, that have gone through this whole life and spent their lifetime writing down things of what this life is about. I mean, from their perspective, I get that
The
from their
the
perspective, but this life has been lived by many, many generations of people. And for somebody to share their story, well, this is what happened in my life. This is what I think we can learn by that. Do I say that that's all divinity? That's a, well, I don't know about that. But I read it from the standpoint of getting a perspective on this life of people that have lived before us.
but
And
King
Mhm.
James didn't live it. King James wasn't even around when they actually lived
well, of course,
what he
King,
wrote
well,
about.
but that's why you have to take this stuff with a grain of salt. If you listen to James Henry Clark, and will tell you about spirituality before Christianity, before Bibles, before there was spirituality before all of that. And we
Mhm.
realize that this stuff has been politicized, just like in today's world. We listen to the
So
news, we
so
listen to three different news, supposed to be in the news, but they each tell you different stories. And
so
that's the
so
same thing with humans. So you have to pick and choose
See,
personally.
but you based on that, based on what you just said, you can't really believe what King James wrote because
well,
it's very subjective. King James,
first
nobody
of
was
all,
supposed to be there in the instances when Jesus was talking to God by himself. So how can you believe a book that is telling you half truths and whole lies?
Well, nobody's saying you believe, but that doesn't say you don't read it. See, you have to. This is what happened. This is where education comes in. This is why the slaves, they don't want you to read. They don't want you to understand. They don't want you to be able to critically look at these things. And
but
so, and
But
I
the
just
Bible is the one thing that they did give you. That's why I don't trust
one
it.
more thing on that, real quickly. And I know James wants to say something, but Muhammad Ali is one of my favorites. Okay, this is one of my idols through life. And they tried to pin him down about why he's a Muslim. Why do you do this? Why do you? He said, I believe all of the religions have tried to do good, but Islam works for me. That's why I choose it, because it works for me. And I think that's what individuals have to do. We have to open our minds and think. No, you don't go in and believe everything the preacher tells you. No, you have to be able to have critical thinking. And this is why they didn't want us to be educated in the first place, so we couldn't think for ourselves and make decisions. Um, so, yeah, I believe it's been politicized, but I still believe the basic tenet of spirituality, where people get together and work in unison to make their communities and their families better, is a good thing. Because if we don't do it for ourselves, who's going to look out for us?
not it's interesting that you were talking about pick and choose because uh, during my second stint in prison, I read, of course, the King James Bible, the Book of Norm. I even read the Tibetan Book of the Dead, as well as the Quran. And if you just read, like you say, you do your Bible, there are things in there that you can also pick and choose. So, what makes the Bible so special, other than the fact that, like, Doctor was pointing out, it was the Bible Belt. Another thing that always has really stuck in my mind is it says, "Suffer little children to come unto me." So, you're going to start with children, suffer little children. I mean, why would that particular phrase appear? appeal to little children when you're talking about someone that or a religion that is supposed to enlighten you, a religion that is supposed to take you to a different plane, but in order for you to obtain this, you have to suffer. Why do I? Why do it? Why do I have to suffer in order for me? I have to die in order for me to retain my rewards. That that concept does not make sense to me. I've
I
seen
don't
too
know.
many people die. So go ahead, Jennifer.
I don't know. Like suffering don't always mean death. Like you
No,
can
no,
like
it doesn't have to. I'm not saying that it always means death,
no.
but you cannot equate suffering unless you're talking about some type of despair. At least that's the way I look at it.
Yeah, and that's all it's about is how you interpret it. Because like when I look at the Bible and and talk about sins and stuff, I feel like you have to obey the 10 Commandments. Everything else is like your, you know, Jesus telling you what to do, and it's all about conviction after the 10 Commandments.
Well, if you consider the commandment to love, if you really loved yourself, accepted yourself, and embraced who you are, it would be very hard for you to wrong your neighbor and to do something wrong to somebody else. A lot of things I think that is confused with the Bible is the concept of Jesus being God versus Jesus being a vessel for God to use through the Holy Spirit. Like Christ is not a name, it's a title. And a lot of people take Christ and make Jesus be Christ when it is the title for the anointing. If you look it up, it is literally the title for the anointing. The Holy Spirit is the whole spirit of God. And the meaning of spirit is breath. So literally, the breath of life gives us the whole spirit of God. And it's up
Hmm.
to us to be able to come to an understanding or a level of self-love to where we realize that Christ is just really the awakening to who you are in God and who God is in you.
Uh, Go ahead,
Yeah,
man, Jennifer.
I mean, in the Bible says we are made in the image of Him. So I mean that you're hitting it right on. Do I necessarily believe that Jesus and God is the same? No, because the Bible doesn't directly say that. I could say I and my mother are one. That doesn't mean that we're one
Right.
person. So,
Right.
I mean, if you look at it like in a common sense point of view, you can't be you in your father. So,
I mean, a lot of people, I don't know if a lot of people use common sense when it comes to religion because they want to believe so bad that they will grab a hold and take on and possess anything that is given if you put Jesus or religion on it. And
mhm,
it's kind of sad a little bit. And it's like I don't have a problem with religion in particular, but I have a problem with the concept because a lot of the spirituality that Mr. Scott was talking about being in the book was taken and then rewritten and washed down to mean something else, written in a different way. So you get the spirituality from where they got it from, but you don't get the concept of the reality of it. So when you go to church and people praising God, that's a real energy in there. That's a real energy and spirit of worship. But if you're doing that and it has the wrong overtone, then it will take away from the energy. It's like I think about Kanye West's new album, and one of the songs he just chanting his mama's name. Like it's really weird. It's like he's summoning the dead. But it's the same thing. If you get enough people to do that, you bring that spirit to life. And it happens the same way in church. It's just a lot of times we redirect and misdirect who God is. So a lot of times you'll be praising God and the pastor come out and then the pastor start to be like God to you because that's who you're praising. That's who you're going to for everything.
mhm,
And it's just confusing because we've been told to believe this. We're believing the same person to come and save us that the people that's killing us believe is telling them to kill us. You know what I'm saying? That how Jesus telling the all these white hate groups that use the Bible as the reason to come against us, that Jesus is telling them to kill us and he's telling us that he gonna save us. It's kind of
Yeah.
hard to do both.
Well, it's clear, that the Bible and religion has been used to manipulate people. I mean, there's an element of where they want to get you into cults. And I'm not going to say cult per se, but to get you to believe so. Okay, you go to church on any Easter Sunday, and you're going to hear a sermon, and that sermon is going to tell you about doubting Thomas, and they're going to tell you how doubting Thomas saw Jesus get crucified. He saw the man stick the thing in his ribs. He saw the thorns. He saw him put the nails in his foot. I saw him put him in. He's dead. I saw him dead. The disciples said, no, 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 no. But these allegory things is what gets you to believe these things. These things have gone through the ages, and they mix, to me, faith with what they want you to believe. I mean, right now, a lot of the churches, look at the mega churches. I mean, these churches, I go down to North Carolina, somewhere I see churches, 10,000 people. I mean, they're auditoriums.
I think it's okay to have people. I think that it's a misrepresentation of God because you're not really making the goal should be, in my eyes, for religion is to you come into church, you learn how to be better to impact the world, and you go and do. But it's like a storehouse. They were trying to see who can get the most people, and whoever can get the most people win, and but it's not effective because you're getting people, but you're not connecting with people. You're not actually they're not connecting in a way to where when you leave here, you're going to be changed. They're just there for the hype.
And see, that's one thing. It's like, growing up going to St. Peter Claver, it was always a connection in church or outside of church. And like even, being an adult, as long as Father Kevin was there, I was able to call and ask questions, whatever. So that was always one thing. And when I started going to the apostolic church, it was a whole different environment. It wasn't about community like the Catholic Church was. It was all about, what can you do for this church? And, I don't do anything outside of this church for anybody.
Church
that was
is a business. It's a big business. In my time in church, I actually volunteered a lot and I moved to help start a church in Phoenix. And when I realized how much of a business it was, that was the first thing that turned me off. Then I started taking my psychology classes and learning about the history of mind control and how it is better if we all have some type of faith. Because if we really tapped into who we are spiritually as Black people, because let me tell you something, you got to be a powerful somebody for people to think that you are superhuman, that you don't feel pain, that you don't get hurt, and that you can do all the things. That's telling you that they know that we are more powerful than we have the knowledge of being.
Yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying, and I want to get to another point where I think that the Black church, especially, misses an opportunity, and that's where when you look in our neighborhoods, and Jennifer, I think you spoke on this when we were on a different show. Uh, Preschool and after school programs for kids. Those used to be very essential, and especially I know, as I said, I had, siblings that were in St. Adelbert's, and St. Adelbert's, the Catholic Church, you always had something going, whether it was from Catholic youth groups and catechism classes, so forth and so on. I went to a foster home and an Episcopal, and it was pretty much the same, except it was the Church of England. But I think that in today's time, when we are talking about our children, we we talk about reaching our children when they get uh, in junior high school, and by then, to me, well, I
It's
know
too late.
even me as a kid, by the time I was 13, 14 years old, I had a whole. I mean, no, if you didn't get to me during the ages probably somewhere between 6 and 12, especially I would say 8 to 12, then it was either the kids that I hung around with or uh, maybe the local uh, pimp's kid that was getting all the cookies and every day when school time come, his daddy take him and he get all brand new clothes and I get two pairs of jeans and a pair of Buster Browns. So uh, what do you think that this is a missed opportunity for the church, uh, or yeah, the church, and I'm not talking about
Well,
religion, but I mean for the church to actually have an impact on the community rather than try to wait until later.
I don't know. I mean, personally, I feel like, we're living in the Me Too movement. So, a lot of people aren't trusting churches with everything that's come out. So it needs to be a repair done before trust can actually happen again, because a lot of people are waking up to our history and stuff. And when you learn about the history and the evilness of how we came to Christianity, and then a lot of people grew up being abused in the church, and they're trying to keep their kids away from that. So it's a lot that has to go into it. Maybe the pastors and whoever else working in the church needs to go through background checks. I don't know. There's something that needs to be done.
Now,
The problem is, I think largely is that anybody can, like, okay, I'm an ordained minister. Anybody can go and
Yeah.
become an ordained minister. And you don't have to be appointed by one through a church. But even more so, anybody can become a pastor without even being ordained. All you got to do is go and start a church and decide that you want to be a pastor. You don't have to, nobody's checking your motives. In the Bible, they talked about the cowbell. They used to send you in, and you had to come out, and that bell still ringing, and you're good. There is no cowbell now. There is no way to know who is really of God and who is really of money. Because a lot of people, this is an easy game. This is an easy come up. Because all you got to do is stroke the people's emotions. And if you stroke their emotions, you say the right thing, then they're going to break you off your bread. You're going to be low.
Hmm.
now, Mr. Scott,
Yeah.
a lot they Jennifer and Doctor Casey probably don't know your background, but you used to work in child abuse. So yeah, I'm gonna put your business out here in the street. So now we've been talking about the effect of religion on children. Uh, Come on, give us some of these. Come on now.
Well, first of all, you misspoke, James. I mean, I was a supervisor in Hennepin County Child Protection for 25 years.
Okay,
And I
understood.
was the most senior supervisor in field. And what field is my goal was to help families have a plan to get out of this. What do you do when they knock on your door? Because people don't know that they have rights. They don't have to, somebody knocks on your door until you actually get a court order. You don't have to do anything they tell you to do. You just voluntarily cooperate and get them out of your life. So, I mean, I was in that, but I still believe, and growing up, right now I have a nonprofit, Minnesota's Black Community Project. And what we have done is my dad wrote 3 books on the Black community in the Twin Cities. It's called the Scott Collection. It's been reissued by the Historical Society. And I have a nonprofit where we've done a new book, Minnesota's Black Community, the 21st Century. And this got a national award. And I'm proud of that. But what we did with the books and of Dad's books is we show businesses, education, people working, and somehow we have been fed something that says that we're lazy, that we don't work, that we've fallen into. I saw so many people in child protection that it's unbelievable. You have these kids and you don't want to take care of them. Why would you have them? I mean, once you have the kid, you are tied to that. And I understand that people fall through cracks. And that should be, and that's going to always happen, but that shouldn't be the norm. Just like all the criminality that we're having in our cities now, just like all the things that are the chaos that we're experiencing now with the police, and that all of it comes down to the structure of your schools, the structure of your churches, the structure of the kids, the people coming up. For my observation, they don't have structure. I used to go to church. My mother played the piano, was the choir director, and then she dragged me on Wednesdays. They have choir rehearsal. And then she dragged me for prayer meeting. And then I got to go, me and my brothers. But I'll tell you this, my mom died right after me and my wife got married. But those choir ladies have been with me my whole life. Anything happens to me, I have a kid, they're coming over to my house with sweet potato pies. They coming over our house making to see my new house that I got. They're coming over. And I think that thing of us keeping together and doing for ourselves and feeling like these people at the church are as close as any relative that I have.
Mm.
And a lot of them at the church we went to, they came up from Birmingham with my mother. I didn't actually know this lady that I used to take until I went to her funeral. She graduated from high school with my mom down in Birmingham. These people were that close where they came together and they helped each other get jobs. They'd help, somebody would come up and stay with us until they could bring up the husband, and then they would go and make a way for them.
My, how times have changed. That is a
Right. That's
rare
right.
thing, and it's
That's what I was
definitely
getting ready to
something more.
say.
I
Yeah,
understand that. Times have changed, but we've changed too. Because times change, that doesn't mean we can't do those same things. That doesn't mean we still can't have our connection and do things for each other. See,
it's trust issues.
we leave that out of the equation, and then our youth, see, they are succumbing to peer pressure instead of parent pressure. See,
Mm.
I had to weigh the thing. Okay, do I want to get upside the head or I want to switch? But I had to kind of weigh that before I decided what I was going to do. Kids don't have to do that anymore. They have their own devices to deal with. And I think it's a total system failure. And I think the church is included in that.
Yeah, I definitely think that there has to be some restructuring of everything. From it's not just reforming the police department; it's reforming every single area because the way that the government was set up and structured, the corporation that we know as our government, it was structured. In a certain way to where some people will never get the advantage based on the way it was structured. And until there is some restructuring, some reframing, we will always be kind of pit against each other, and it will always be a disservice in the community. I wish communities were the way they were when I was younger. I'm only coming up on 40, so I don't have the same life experience, but I've experienced enough and seen enough of times. I was born in the great year, a little bit before devices, and enough to experience all of the analog equipment. But it's the structure is bad, and as people have become hurt in church and hurt in life, and it has divided us as people. So until we start to heal those interpersonal relationships, a lot of it is healing ourselves, getting to know ourselves and accepting ourselves, because we're going to always be looking to judge somebody else if we judging ourselves internally.
But I have to ask, when did it become the norm for our kids to raise themselves? Usually,
I raised myself.
Well, I
see,
mean,
I mean, I remember an age, it was called latchkey kids. I guess the parents worked and the kids had to come home and take care of themselves, take care of their little brothers and so on. You know, but I'm giving a little credit to Mr. Scott and myself. I mean, I did the same job, and we didn't have no latchkey. We had to go to the neighbor's house to get the key because Mama didn't trust us with the key, but they
Right.
trust us with each other. I never understood how
I
that worked,
mean,
but
it's just a change in the system. Like women have been told that they can't put their child's father on their assistants and stuff. So when they go get public housing, now they're hiding the fact that a man lives there. And then they go to get food stamps and they get told that they have to put the man on child support. Now all of a sudden, that's a broken home because the man is angry because they're losing their paychecks. You know what I'm saying? So it's just like we're set up because if you even look at the child support system, it was never designed for failed relationships. It was designed for families who was legally married and got divorced. And then the welfare system took it upon themselves to tell us we have to go in there and put men on child support. My child's father is on the birth certificate, lived in the same house, and they try to tell me how to get child support. I said that makes no sense. You
Mhm.
know, you could just put them on my stuff, and we could live good. And what's the point of doing all that all around backward stuff? So either you're not going to stand up for yourself and you're not going to know your rights, or you're going to put them on there, or you're going to walk away with nothing. Not a lot of people know that, so then they end up struggling. And then when you do have a child who's a latchkey, all of a sudden you have all kinds of issues that you didn't have when I was growing up. I'm almost 40 as well, and I remember a lot of my friends at elementary school had keys, and they go home to an empty house, which I never had to experience that, but I know family members who did, but they was perfectly fine doing that. Nowadays, if you do that, it's a call to CPS. When before it could just be a simple call to the police, hey, can you go check my child? And they'll, go check, make sure the child is okay, follow up, no nothing. Nowadays you can't do that, you know. So it's a big setup. That's why I think about the school start times, with elementary going so early and they'll be home by themselves. Those kids are under the age of 12. So you're already setting parents up.
And then it's so hard. It's so expensive to get daycare if you have a child that has to go to daycare, because like that's $400 or $500 a month, even if your child is older. But the younger
Mhm.
your child is, the more expensive that is. So that is another area where we're failing. Um, and then it was a lot of people, like Mr. Scott said, in your neighborhood that was feeding in. When I was coming up, my mother worked at GM. I used to go home by myself, but I had neighbors that would feed me, that would check on
Mhm.
me and make sure I was cool. And then, but a lot of times, I think that in some instances, parents become reliant on that crutch, and then they stop parenting. And then when you get one parent that stops parenting, and now it's like, well, my mama didn't parent me and I came out fine. So guess what I'm gonna do? I'm not gonna parent my child. I'm not gonna do this and I'm not gonna do that. And in one of my books, Spiritual Human Behavior, it is a theory that describes you either become exactly like your parent or you become bipolar opposite. And a lot of times people are okay with, I want to say, the bare minimum of parenting. So they'll put their kids off on somebody. And a lot of times, like for my mother, from my understanding, she was left with people kids. And, like she had to take care of other people. So about time she got to me, I think she was just over it.
Mr. Scott, what do you think about? I, I guess can we call it the evolution of self reliance? Because as the doctor pointed out, there is no more parenting.
No, no, it's really, just thinking about how I grew up. James, everywhere we lived across the street from a school. Everywhere we lived growing up, every single place. And so my role as the oldest one, I had to take my brother to school. I had to make sure he got to school. And in those days, you came home for lunch. They let you go home. So I had to go home, make him a peanut butter sandwich. I don't want to. I want more jelly on it. I have to go do that. That's my role. And then his role was to take care of my sister. when she went to school, and her role was to take care of the little brother. And we always lived right across the street from the school, and so there was always, for whatever reason, there was discipline and organization, in spite of the fact that we didn't really have anything. I mean, coming up, we started from ground one. You know, my grandmother cleaned floors. She was a domestic. My grandfather was a janitor. Mom, she was the church pianist. That's really all she did as far as work. But somehow they were able to send me to college. I get a master's degree at 22. My brother Walter played baseball down south at Alabama State. 4-year degree. He's been a coach and teacher in Minneapolis till he retired. My sister, a PhD, Columbia, Harvard, PhD doctor, professor. And my youngest brother retired from Xerox, was top technician. And these are because we had schools we could go to in the neighborhood, we could walk to. Now there's no schools in the neighborhood kids can walk to. They're sending kids here, they're sending kids there. They got these. One of my sons is a teacher. He said, "Dad, you never believe us. These kids don't even show up. They don't pay no attention to them." You know, he's like, they want to challenge me. You say on the bus, there's fights. They won't let the parents on the bus to watch the parents want to volunteer. Grandparents want to volunteer on the bus. You can't do it. Background check. We got to go through all this stuff to help their own kids get through school. So the chaos has, to me, it's really gotten to a critical point. I mean, when we see what is going on in our cities, and that our politicians and our people are supposedly in charge, they just don't seem to have a clue. I mean, the man, what's his name, that said, they don't know. They don't know.
See, let me give you, after you went through all that, Mr. Scott, let me give you an example of today's generation. I recently met a family member. He's 17 years old. He's in the 10th grade, and he reads on an 8th grade level. Now you tell me about today's education. And you're both parents. You can start if you want. But to me, that's today's reality. Period. Point blank.
It is. And my son sees that as a teacher every day. I mean, he's so disgusted with it. He's just ready to quit. And I said, well, you're getting closer. You can get your retirement, get out of there with something. But that's how, I mean, this is how sad it is. And we pay taxes for these schools. I don't care where you live. My kids have never went to Minneapolis public schools, but I pay taxes still every year. It's on there because these schools are not doing. We had a great high school here, Minneapolis Central High School, which people lived in the neighborhood. The staff lived in the neighborhood. They helped these kids go into jobs and college. We had a program at North High School, which was the best auto mechanic program in the city of Minneapolis for high school. They did, well, we can't afford that anymore. We're not going to do that anymore. And so we don't have, as James, as we've said before, we don't really have communities. And when we had a community, we could have little businesses. We could have the type of things where it was our community and we knew who the people were and we could kind of police ourselves. And that's another thing that's not happening. We're not really holding these kids, parents are not holding, and we need to hold the parents accountable.
Thank you. Thank you.
See that
you, go ahead.
See that's my thing is that I feel like in today's society, like we're pushing so much fear on the next generation, like fear the police, fear that, and instead of trying to repair the relationship between the police and the community, because that's one thing I don't understand. If we can go through history and know that white people were so bad to black people, and now today we can coexist and marry and everything else, why are we so like that against the police right now? And I understand police brutality and all that, but why not hold accountability instead of pushing fear and saying, instead of me protecting you guys, we're going to just take them out of the schools and still let them kill you in the streets? I mean, that makes absolutely no sense to me. You know what I'm saying? You're still pushing this false narrative, like they're dangerous in the school, but they're not dangerous in the streets. Like
You
we
see,
gotta hold real accountability to the police at hand.
but wait a minute, hold it now, because whoa, you hit the real nerve there because you have children, not adults. You have children out in the streets, and I'm talking
Mm-hmm.
about below the age of 16, 17, killing each other.
Sure do.
Okay, so why aren't these kids at home with their with their school books and trying to learn before you
Be-
start hold on, before you start talking about these kids? There has to be somebody that lets them out the house. These
yeah, there
people
does.
that they go home with guns. You
Mm-hmm.
you as a parent know that they come home. You fear your kids. You fear to discipline your kids.
A
Start
lot of people.
disciplining your kids. Not a lot of people, because somebody is letting these kids out in the street. These
Well,
kids live.
no, I
Let, let,
I,
let,
I
let,
I disagree because I know when I was in school and I was skipping school, nobody let me skip school. I was doing my own thing. I was out in the street. I was running the street. Nobody
Right,
let
but
you
but
do it.
but
You
soon
do it. You sell the people that selling drugs in the street. Nobody is give. Well, some parents give their
right. Some
children
parents let
drugs,
thank
their
you.
kids do
Thank you.
but
everything.
Because
the
they
majority
support
of
their parents.
but we also got to remember that discipline is fear based. Discipline is not, you know, sunshine and bubblegum. Discipline is fear based. The way you discipline somebody is to instill some type of fear. And that's where religion comes back in because that gives you the
Thank you.
fear of hell, the fear of doing something wrong, the fear of rejection and all of these
Mm-hmm.
things. So a lot of people um for discipline to really you have to establish some fear. That's where the belt is. That is where the
Not
violence.
allowed
But
to use
then,
that anymore. Can't use the
Yeah.
belt.
You
I
you
mean, but the other part is when you have repressed emotions. A lot of men, when you're talking about men, a lot of men are not allowed to be emotional. They're not allowed. It's
That's
some
being soft.
rule that if you show any type, but that means you don't learn how to process your emotions. You don't learn how to, you know what I'm saying, say, okay, I feel like this. Now what am I going to do now that I feel like this? Not what am I going to do and I'm going to act out and have a temper tantrum like a 5-year-old and go kill
Mhm.
10 people. But what am I going to do to manage how I feel and understand why I feel like this so that I never feel like this again? But when you have suppressed emotions where people are not allowed to feel, and then you have women that's overly emotional because you're told you can feel however you can just be, and the same cap has to be applied to women that are applied to men. If men can't be overly emotional, then we got to quit teaching women to be
Mhm.
overly emotional. But then you got to quit teaching boys that it's bad to cry or it's bad to be hurt or any, because that comes out as anger. It comes out sometimes as violence. It comes out as abuse because really you're stifling your growth.
Well, that's one of the problems. I mean, the parents are some of the parents I would see in child protection. I saw this one lady comes in and talks to me, and since I'm from here, I kind of know everybody's family. And so it's just really
Right.
kind of was really strange. So she comes in and she looks like a 20-year-old. She's dressed like the kids, and I'm talking to her. Well, she's got three daughters, and they're like 18, 19. I mean, this is a grown woman that acts like the girls. She gets together with them. They're talking about wearing each other's clothes, and they're talking, but she's not being a parent to them. She's not saying anything about what are you doing with school? What are we gonna? There's none of that. It's just this is a friendly buddy type of thing between her and her three daughters. So there's no acceptance or no this parenting role. And I know we've talked about that we have these 35-year-old grandmothers, they don't know. Well, my grandmother was in her 30s. I mean, my mother was young, but they still had discipline and they were still able to raise their families and be adults.
I
And
think
now
I
I don't see these kids trying to. They all want to be kids still. They all want to. They keep wanting to still be kids instead
I
of being
think
an
I think
adult
that
figure.
comes from not being able to be a child when you are a child. A lot of these people with the latchkey kids and stuff like that, when you have to be an adult at 8, 9 years old, you're raising everybody. Then when you get older, you don't want the responsibility. And then the other part is that um people that aren't parented or are over parented, because normally when you have extremely strict parents, it makes you buck. So if your parents was extremely strict, then now you're trying to be a better friend to your child so that y'all can be a little bit closer, but then you lack the discipline. And it's really no excuse for it.
Yeah,
It's just a matter of, and then you got a lot of people that now they start working. Now they grandmother raised a kid, so you got a lot of grandparents raising kid, and it diminishes the respect. And I speak from this firsthand.
yeah,
My mother wasn't a present person, so when it was time for her to try to discipline me, it was like, who are you? You don't. Where have you shown that you love me enough to discipline me? You can't abandon me and then think you can come and tell me what to do. It don't work like that.
yeah,
So
Right.
it's a lot of it is the absence of parenting.
yeah.
Like when you were coming up, I'm sure that if your mother wasn't there, it was somebody else around. But now these kids, they don't have nobody. If you don't have no, I know I felt like I didn't have nobody. Right? If you don't feel like you have nobody, then what are you going to do? You're going to act out. You're going to join a
Mhm.
gang because that gang is going to protect you the way that your parents did not protect you. The streets can it's a muddy
It
little
gives
thing
you that
because
instant reward. It gives you that
Mhm.
instant gratification that you did not get at home. Look at what I accomplished. Look at my peers look up to me. There's a lot of. I'm sorry,
Mm.
y'all. I'm
Bes-
letting my street get back
Sure,
into me here
sure,
a little bit, but
sure.
but when I look at things from the eyes of those kids, because that's my life. By the time I was 17, I'd been in a real adult penitentiary because, uh, well, anyway, uh, like you go back to that attitude about repression. You know, I was small, but I could not be soft, and I could
mhm,
not let anybody know whether something hurt me. I had to always put that front up. Whereas maybe when the lights are off and there's nobody in that cell with me, I'm shedding tears like Judas. Yeah, But that persona that I have to present, because back in those days you didn't have the gangs to protect you. You had to live on your own merits.
mhm,
Nowadays, you can kind of cover that up. Yeah, you got a gang behind you or whatever. So I look at it from the sense of, okay, I'm a kid, I'm out here, and I have to survive. What is necessary in order for me to survive? The first thing that I have to have is a lack of supervision, because I have to be able to do whatever I want to do when I want to do it, regardless of the consequences.
mhm.
Now,
So,
see, this is the point I was trying to make about the police. Okay. Now, we take them out of schools, but we leave them in the community. So we're telling the kids to be scared of these police. How many children have we lost because they stole a car and was running from the police?
see,
Mhm.
See what I'm saying?
that,
It's stuff like that.
that's
No, no, no,
another.
because we're teaching fear, but we're not teaching the respect part about it. You know what I'm
But
saying?
see, this is what I'm saying. If I'm involved in that type of activity, I don't fear the police. What the hell do I? That,
No, but you fearing the
no,
getting caught.
I
You fearing
No,
the
no,
no,
pulling
I
them
no.
over.
didn't.
You
No,
getting the
no, I
fearing.
did not. The
No,
only
no,
thing
no.
I
I'm
feared
I'm
was
just saying.
death.
I'm just saying,
That's
like
the
right
only.
now, right
I'm
now,
just
these
telling
kids,
you.
these children are dying
They
running
they
from
don't
the
run
police.
because they scared of
You
the
know what I'm saying?
police. They run because they know they're doing some fucked up
Right.
shit, and
They
they ain't
doing
got no
stuff
business
wrong.
doing it to
They doing
begin
stuff
with.
wrong. But what is going on in today's society with the police? There is it's an overkill. You know what I'm
No,
saying?
it's the same amount of
No,
killing.
the police brutality right now. You know what I'm
It's
saying?
just more
They're
visible.
Yeah, it's more. I'm not saying it's increased. It's an overkill. You know what I'm saying? For every one that they kill, they go back and kill two more because there's no real accountability. The only time when there's an actual conviction is when people get too rowdy. There's no real accountability for the police doing what they're doing. But instead, you're going to say, take them out of the schools because it's traumatizing. And what's going on in St. Paul, Minneapolis, there's been more fights in the schools. And it's getting worse. There's blood all over the hallways in our school buildings because they took the police out with no backup plan, no plan of safety. They tell the teachers not to intervene. That's not okay. You don't tell the teacher not to intervene and then take the police out with no backup plan.
Well,
You're sending the wrong
you can't put
message.
your teachers into danger if you have
That's my
children
point.
that's but there is no way around that. If you think, I mean, you could look back to Lean on Me. It's the same scenario that movie depicted, and that was based off of a true story. Nothing has changed, better or worse. If
That's what I'm
anything,
saying. There's no accountability for there's no real accountability for the police. But instead, we're going to take them out of the schools and leave them in the community. Now, if you
well,
look at if you look at our community right now, it's the justice system is a joke. There's so
you
many
can't
people going.
complain about the police being overbearing and then get mad that they take them out the school system. They're taking them out the school system to try to protect the
No,
children from the harshness. And I understand that you're saying that when you take them out, you got to put something there in order to
exactly.
decrease the violence. But the way the laws are written, the police will never get in trouble unless they change the immunity laws. That part,
That's what I'm
there's
saying.
nothing
There's
that we
there's
can
no real
physically do about that.
accountability. You know what I'm saying?
Mr.
There's no
Scott,
real accountability at all until it's like, oh, they're getting too rowdy. They're burning down this. They're burning down that. Let's get a conviction going. You know what I'm saying?
That
It's a
doesn't that
joke. And then these kids,
it
I know a lady who has a teenage son right now, and he's off the chain. You know what I'm saying? She even called and report him, and they do absolutely nothing. There's no accountability out here for these children at all either. Our justice system is a joke right now. It's
But the
just a
justice
joke.
system can't be responsible for raising our children.
No,
The
I'm not
justice
saying it could be
system,
responsible, but if a parent is telling you that their child is doing this, doing that, they're showing you what their child is
no,
doing.
because what that parent is doing is that parent is gonna get that child in jail, and that parent is gonna create a lifelong criminal. Because once you send them to the jail system, they go and they get more influenced by worse people being
I
in
know that.
jail. That's
I
not
know
gonna
that.
help. That
I'm
I
not
get
saying
what
that
you're
would
saying.
help, but I'm just saying it's a hard situation right now. People wonder why people ain't parenting. Let's tell the truth of the fact that when parents do parent, they're not getting no help at
but
all.
but
Help from
but how-
where? Where are they supposed to
but
get help from?
Whoever
and
they're calling to get help.
You
but
should
how
not have
come?
to call nobody to get help. When
Right,
you
Okay,
call
so
right.
so when there's
my nephew was called my nephew's mother called the police on my nephew. You know what that did? Ended up getting me more time in jail because that didn't make him regress from being bad. That made his ass go and do more worse things because now my mama didn't threw me to the wolves. So when your mama throw you to the wolves, where else you gonna go?
okay,
You gonna
so
go to the
so what does
jungle.
a parent do? See what I'm saying?
The,
It's a
the
two-edged
parent
sword.
But
it has to start young. You can't wait till a child get 11, 12,
thank
13
But
you,
years
thank
old
but
and
you.
try
there's
to
parents
discipline.
there's
You got
parents
to
out here
discipline.
who started young and they kids still turn out like that, because they get out in the world and they see their friends, they go hanging out and do dumb stuff. Sometimes kids never leave the house, and the first time they leave the house, they go out doing something dumb just because they got a little bit of freedom. So it's like it's what can a
You
parent
cannot
really do?
stop a person from being or doing whatever they were going to be or do. The only thing that
Exactly.
you can do is provide whatever guidance that you have. There are a lot of people that are not providing guidance. That is
So
the biggest killer.
as long as you have a roof over your head, food on the table, and clothes on the back, and sending your kid to school, your job is done.
No, no,
Technically,
no, no.
That's what I'm saying though. When parents call outside for help
but
and
who
they're
are they
not getting
calling?
the help,
Are they calling a therapist? Are they calling
there
somebody to
are
talk to their
yes,
children?
there are parents who's doing that kind of stuff. That's what I said. When there are parents calling for help and they're not getting help, then parents let their kids go on and do what they do because they have nowhere to turn to. That's what I'm saying. That's why I said I know a parent who done did multiple things. and nothing is working. Nothing works. That
That
child
that
feels
sounds like a
untouchable.
personal parenting
Well,
issue.
see, we keep overlooking when we talk about parents, when we talk about there's two people involved with this. There's other family members involved with these kids. And so personally, coming up again, I can only go by the experiences firsthand and then the things that I learned in working in child protection, where I'd see things like I'd have to do court coverage one day as a supervisor. So I'm there. Here's these two 10-year-old kids going up in the court and they're asking, well, where's your lawyer? Do you have some? Where is their parents? Why are these kids here in court without their parents? Make them come here. If they don't come here, put them in jail. Why are they letting their kids, 9, 10 years old, go into court by themselves and they're not here? I mean, what kind of sense does this make? But it just points out the parent role when they say they need help. You have to know how to get the help. You have to be persistent on these things. They're not. I went to several meetings, community meetings, where I saw people from the county come in with resources to do things for the people. And the community is like, well, when I go downtown to get my license, I got to wait in line. Why
They
do I
just
got to
complain
sit
about
in
stupid
line?
stuff.
Why do I got to sit in line and do it? Well, get in line. Everybody got to get in line, okay? But what do we need for you and your kids? We need you want a daycare center? Do you want after school programs? What are we going to need to address the things in our community? We're always going to have the black people, we're going to have a beef with the black man. I mean, that's just going to be a lifelong thing. My mother growing up in Birmingham telling me, oh, I was a kid. I used to have to go to the movie and sit upstairs. I had to go to the bathroom. It's nasty. We had to go to a drinking fountain. It don't work. Me and my brother were like, God, we just hate white people now. What in the world is? And she's like, they don't know. Don't worry about them. You guys just try to do right. Don't worry about them. They don't know, you know. And so we have to, with our families, with our parents. My dad used to tell me, you go to jail, you can just stay there because don't even think about calling me. What happens? I'm at this thing at Powderhorn Park with my buddy. They start rioting. They never talk about this riot at Powderhorn Park. They talk about Northside. They tore up all of South Minneapolis. They tore up, ransacked TVs, people running around with TVs. So we drive to a drive-in to get a hamburger. My friend has this nice 57 Chev. They saw us at the gathering. Police shoot the tires out. Shotgun, shoot the tires out, take us to jail. Said we was one of the looters. I said, oh, God, I can't call my dad. So I had to call him and get out. And he was like, I told you. I said, well, when I told him what happened, he said, I get it. I understand. I understand what happened. Come on,
Some
man.
things are unavoidable.
This is going to be, he said, this is something for you can learn about what this is all about. And so you have to, I just say the parents, and it's tough. I saw so many families in child protection where there's 4 or 5 kids and 3 or 4 fathers. The kids don't know. They see one father come in and treat this kid good, and they don't treat me. And all this causes this confusion. This all within their own families, and not knowing how to be blended, and knowing you're still a family. You might not be together, and that's where it comes into being an adult and being able to realize that these kids are yours. They're your responsibility, no
I think
matter what.
a lot of
And,
people don't want kids, and then they have them, and then they don't know what to do with them
and that's
after they
another
have them.
thing. I began to learn everybody shouldn't be in a relationship. Everybody shouldn't have kids,
Right.
but those things do
And then you
happen.
need to manage who they're having kids with, because if you're having kids with somebody that's toxic, you're already creating an environment where that child is not going to be properly
But
loved and
that's where
supported.
you get into to the thought process and who you have around you and what support you're getting and what
See, what,
and
see,
that's
and I kind of disagree with you there, Doctor, because a lot of the women that I attracted because of my bad boy reputation. So it's not also,
Well, again,
all y'all ain't out there looking for them wholesome guys. All
No,
y'all
no,
are,
I
No,
all
like
that's
y'all
me
why
a
are
she
out
said
bad
you
there.
guy.
got to do better.
I like me a bad guy now.
but hey,
But it's how you
see that,
be bad.
but
You
see that good guy. See, he bring home his money, and he could only take you out once a month. See, I got a pocket full of money. I can take you out every
see,
day.
but
I can buy you a new outfit. I can buy your kids a new outfit.
it's
You
beyond
understand?
that though, because with
That's
that money comes
yeah.
control issues, and a
Yes,
lot of
it
times
does.
people
Yes,
use
it
that
does.
money to get over control of you, versus you know it
You notice I'm not saying no to nothing that you're saying.
Hey, my
It's,
daddy,
it's,
my daddy raised me not to share money until you have a real, true commitment.
see,
I mean,
you know,
And
it's
so,
nothing wrong with a person that was raised in an environment that was different from yours, because you can go. I married a good guy. I thought he was good. He had a job. He had never been in the street. He never sold drugs. He never did. He was just the perfect. He was a fucking fraud. He was
it's,
not who I thought he was. He was somebody else. And I'm thinking I didn't. I'm like, I'm not dating no more bad guys. I'm not gonna date no more drug dealers. I'm gonna get me somebody who got me a job. He's nice.
mhm.
And
see,
he was abusive. We was fighting. We was, you know what I'm saying? It was like I couldn't win for losing. And now I feel like, well, what did I do? But I mean, I'm thankful for my children. But I always wanted children, though, so it's a little bit different. But uh, uh, getting a guy that's good doesn't mean that it's going to be a good parent.
well, see, but
You
see,
got,
the thing on that is there's one thing that you're overlooking: the women pick.
mm-hmm. Well, not all the
Okay,
time, but yeah, mostly.
if the women pick,
oh,
I
oh,
believe that.
sure, yeah, hey, I believe that wholeheartedly. But just like the male bird, you got to attract that woman. You got to go through
Hmm.
certain things, So, if I'm the brightest specimen,
If
you
you
know,
pass the test,
I
if you
you
pass
know,
the test, yeah. If
yeah,
you
but
pass
like
See,
she
but
said
sex
though,
is so easy
but
that
right, yeah, but I might
sex is
have that
too easy
bad
now.
character,
Mhm.
but
you
the
know.
Yeah,
women
when
pick.
when
sometimes,
when when people are looking for love, sex feels like love.
Thank you.
And love, you don't realize that love gonna come with a child if you don't wrap it up. And a lot of people are high and drunk and enjoying themselves, and then they realize, oh shoot, I didn't get pregnant. What I'm gonna do now? We ain't talked about kids. I don't know if he want the baby. I don't, And then a lot of people are having kids to keep men, and then men impregnate women to try to keep women. It's just a circle of toxic foolishness a lot of times. And I know toxic is one of those words that everybody throw around now, but it really is. Nobody, not nobody. A lot of people don't have pure intentions. So you get with somebody and you get with them just to sleep with them, and then you end up getting pregnant, or and then what do? Religion teaches you not to have abortion, so a lot of people are caught between not wanting to have an abortion and then being stuck with a child.
but religion also teach you not to do fornication too. So now
You
you
can't
just picking what
avoid
you
you can't
you
avoid
picking and
nature.
choosing.
Picking and
That's a
choosing.
part
There
of
you
human
go.
nature, though. You can't avoid human
Mhm.
nature.
Get
I mean, no,
on.
you can't. But I mean, that's your thing. You know, the Bible says about fornication too. But yeah, that goes back to the Ten Commandments. That shall not murder. So
Well, then,
it's a personal thing. If you could live with it, because abortion, abortion is something totally different. You know what I'm saying? In my opinion, like to me, it would be I'm killing my baby, but it's not viewed like that to everybody. So I'm not sitting up here saying I'm anti-abortion. Don't go do that. I'm just saying, like, if you're thinking about abortion as in how you said it, then also think about the fornication too. That's
Right,
all.
right, right. But that is the most people. Most people don't believe in
Hmm.
abortion, and then they end up with this baby that they don't really want,
yeah, but
and
see,
now you're abandoning the baby.
making these decisions on drugs and alcohol and not. See, this is where you run into the real problems. I mean, it's like, yeah, my grandmother, them, they used to whoop our ass. I was going to tell you, they used to wear us out, but they
But
were not on any drugs, or they were not on, they were doing things that they felt to keep us so that the police wouldn't get their hands on us. They said we better
Mm-hmm.
than they would, and they would do that. And so the discipline thing is really, and the choices that people make. I tell you, it's really this is where the trouble comes in. This is where people are not getting a real education, and they used to do a better job even in schools with doing things about what life is, with like things like civics classes and teach people what it is to run a house and
They have
what
watered down the education system.
what they don't do any of these things to teach you really hands-on things that you're going to need to know to
No home
survive.
ec, no nothing to get you prepared for life.
Yeah,
but
but the
see
hands-on
now,
things they have to do.
uh,
So,
Mm-hmm.
uh,
And see,
what you're
that's
saying.
just the big plan. You know what I'm saying? Because like
well, it makes you wonder.
they put child protection in there. You can no longer do that. You know what I'm saying? I feel like they made it illegal for me to whoop my child, only for the police to be able to kill them in the street. That's
Right.
why I don't understand like why take them out of the schools, but you still got them in the community. There's no real plan behind any of it. Just
Yeah.
well, if the police are at the school, then
Everything.
they're going to do this to you. You know what I'm saying? Like we shouldn't be telling our children that. That shouldn't be the message that the police will kill you just because they see you. You know what I'm saying? I think that's dangerous.
What I
I
learned
think it's really dangerous.
when I visited DC in 2016, and going into the Capitol, you have to listen to a video. And the thing that stuck out to me in the video the most was that it said that this was all an experiment. There is no plan. They are going along and making it up as they go.
Mm-hmm.
And when we realize that it was originally an experiment, then we can take our life back into our hands because you experimenting on us, clearly.
Right.
This is I mean, the Capitol recording the videos. I mean, I recorded the video. It wasn't supposed to be no recording, but I was like, hold on now. You said it was an experiment. Like, what do you mean? So everything that we've learned was just a trial and error.
And I want to go back to that discipline to where everybody was talking about you can't beat your kids, and I understand that, but generally, when you get your initiation into a gang, that's an ass whooping for however long it lasts, and they're telling these people you have my permission. So it's not that we can't accept discipline, but how is it so possible that we can enforce discipline outside of the house, but there's no discipline enforced inside the house?
I went to the military for discipline. The reason why I went to the army is because I felt like I lacked the discipline that I needed to be successful.
The reason why I went in the army is because I had already been to jail, and they told me if I didn't go in the army, I was going back. Okay. And they told me that, hey, look here, we can teach you how to jump out of airplanes, and then you can go all around the world.
Hmm.
But before I went around the world in 1967, I'm walking the streets of Detroit. Detroit is burning. And they're telling me, don't worry about them fires over here. You go and protect these people's houses over here. I'm
Hmm.
not gonna put no label on that.
Mm-hmm.
In 1968, I come down of a hill and I see John Carlos and Tommy Smith holding their hands up in the air with the black glove. I don't know what that means. Then I go and read it a little bit. Okay. In 1969, they tell me I can come home. I read the paper again. Hey, you know what? I think I'm gonna stay over here another couple of years. Y'all call me back in 1971. I know who the enemy is over here. When I come back in 1971, I get people spitting on me because I call myself defending the democracy that they enjoyed over here. But no, I come home as a baby killer. So all of that, I went to the army without discipline. When I came home, what they taught me, I used to learn how to rob banks. And that's what I did for until they passed the three strike law, because by then I already had four strikes. So I had to find something else to do. So all of that,
I
when I
mean,
went
the
when
military
I went to
definitely
the
makes you a
joint,
machine.
when I went to the joint, I considered it a university because then I could learn from all these people that do
Mhm.
my job better. Okay, I would, and when I come home as a felon, I knew I couldn't get a job. You wasn't gonna give me that bullshit about, hey, like a job pay so and so. Who the hell gonna hire me? And our kids feel the same way. Like I
Mhm.
said, I got a family member that'll probably get put out of school in 2 years when he's 19, and he'll be reading on the 10th grade unless I do something about it, not the system, unless I do something about it.
At least go
And,
get him a
So,
GED book.
and see, I
not
feel like
even that. The first thing I have to do is teach him how to comprehend what he's reading.
Mhm.
That's the
Mhm.
first thing I have to teach him. And then hey, if you all of that leads to having a well-rounded life. I don't care what you do. If you can't read, you already finished. You
You
know,
better tell him to
if
go
if
join the
if,
military.
if the only thing that you can read is a gram scale, buddy, you in trouble.
Right.
I'm sorry.
but see, if you guys notice, this is all like history repeating itself
Thank you. Why haven't
because
we
like
learned?
right. But see, people get mad when I say this all the time. I'm going to blame No Child Left Behind because No Child Left Behind set it up for everybody to be pushed forward. The Esau Act is No Child Left Behind. There was very little changes made. That's why I keep saying No Child Left Behind because that's what started it. You know what I'm saying? The Esau Act came in, Obama changed a little bit of it and kept it the same way. Our kids are still not being learned. And I just tell people to sum it up, I'd be like, they dumb down our kids to get Trump in office.
Well, no,
No,
the
I
whole
mean,
education system is screwed because
no,
even
it
the
is.
education that we get isn't an accurate education. They
It was
don't teach
better.
us act
It was better. It was. I grew up
subjectively.
in St. Paul. It was better than what it is now. So
The material hasn't changed,
Yeah,
and
but you
that's what
should
needs
be
to
able
be
to
changed the
read.
most.
When you're in the fifth grade, when you get out of grade school, you should be able to read. Okay, the
Right.
newspaper is at the fifth or sixth grade level. Okay, they should be able to read a newspaper at the fifth or sixth grade. I mean, they're failing. If they're not doing that, there should be standards that we're paying for this. We pay for them to educate these kids. But now here in the Twin Cities, now we have people from other countries, and I saw big articles. Oh, we're going to teach this language now. We're going to teach this. Well, what about these people these kids that are here and graduating that are high school seniors and can't read? You need to focus on these kids first before you start doing all these esoteric programs. If people need to get something else, we have to have what we're paying for. And they're going to always say, well, now though we have to teach the Spanish, which is great for those people that want to go into languages. That's a wonderful skill to have and go into it. But they need to have the base. They need to know how to read the English language when they get out of the fifth and sixth grade. They need to be
and
competent readers by that time, because then they can pick up other things they may want to do. They may want to work with their hands. They may want to not want to continue in schooling. They may want to do electricity. They may want to do plumbing. They may want to do, but you have to know how to read first. And the school should be graded on teaching these kids that they can read at the level they're supposed to be at. They're not doing it.
But a lot of that goes back to parenting.
Mr.
Because if
Scott,
you
Mr.
can teach
Scott,
them at school all day, but if you don't you send them no books at home, then how is that going to help? You gotta have things that they can read and comprehend on their level. But a lot of parents aren't. A lot of parents can't read and comprehend. So how are you going to teach
thank you.
somebody to
Thank
read and comprehend if you can't?
Right. And
and
and, and
see,
Mr. Scott and Jennifer, how many vocational schools are there in your city to
I
teach?
think one St. Paul College.
St. Paul Tech, yeah, they're on
So
Marshall.
all those things that you just
Yeah,
talked about, Mr. Scott. You gonna put all those kids in one school?
yeah. Well,
I mean, the vocational part used to be part of the high school.
right, and it should still be, and there should also be things. I mean, I've worked at a company where we recruited students from Job Corps centers around the country and brought them to Minneapolis, 100 students, to teach them how to do computer programming. These the amount of companies here in the Twin Cities, they can have a training program to say you get out of this 6-month program, you're going to be at Target, you're going to be at Medtronic, you're going to be at 3M. There's all these companies here that if they really wanted to do these things, it's here. It's here to be done. And they used to do it. St. Paul Urban League, LEAP program, they had jobs, they were tied with all these companies. And why they allow these things to stop, I just think it's the politicians are just not on top of their game. They're taking these jobs now to get paid, and they're not really doing anything for the people with it. They get in, and you don't hear from them anymore.
Well, it's a lot of broken promises because politicians they don't control as much as they make it seem when they campaign.
Yeah.
And they make a lot of promises that they can't really deliver, I don't believe, because the process of changing laws and the process of making the changes that we need is really above them. It takes a collaborative effort. And if you get older people in all of these positions, then if they're not willing to change, you can't have somebody that's 80 years old in Congress and think that they're going to make a change to the bill that's going to be effective, because guess what they think? They still think 80-year-old,
Thank you. Thank you.
60s, they're still stuck in that time frame. That was the real reason why I didn't subscribe to Joe Biden, because Joe, you've done all these things in the past, you've said all these horrible things in the past. What makes us believe that all of a sudden now that you're for black people? I mean, just him saying if you don't vote you're not black was a slap in the face to me, because right now he has not done half of the things that he promised black people.
Well, I think I understand what you're saying, and I really think. Oh man, see, I'm gonna have to invite you back on the show because I think we put a lot of things on the president that there are certain things that he inherited, but I will admit to this. Um, Joe to me was the viable alternative, not so much the right man for the job.
I I I, I am not a Trump supporter. I didn't vote for Trump. I didn't vote for any president in the last election because I don't believe in either one of them. But the one thing I liked about Trump is that he was going to tell you the truth of how he felt for real. Versus regular politicians, they gonna sugarcoat, they gonna lie, they gonna make it seem what it ain't. And the one thing that was sure enough for Trump is he was gonna say if he ain't like it, if he thought it was this or he thought it was that, he was gonna be straight up because he didn't come up in the game of politicians.
Worst president in my lifetime.
But
Worst president in my lifetime. Whenever I even look at it, he makes me want to vomit. I mean, he's just the worst president ever. No know-how, all about himself, nothing about all the things that we need to do in this. Can never paid any attention to any of that stuff. It's all about him. And I
value his presidency because it exposed the truth. There is no other president that would have gotten to office and exposed the truth of this nation for what it really is versus what they made us believe it is. And again, I do not like Trump as far as a president, but I like the exposure that he gave to what the American culture truly is, because he didn't make those people be racist. He did was he kind of
he gave them permission.
He opened the door.
He really played them. He used them. If you know you're gonna get support, you're gonna feed whoever's supporting you whenever they want to hear.
And that's why he still kind of has the power that he has. But getting back to what we were talking about, it seems that we have, to me, used our kids. Well, let me get to the actual question here, because there's a specific wording here. Okay. I wrote, our kids are being killed and killing each other in record numbers. Life has lost its sanctity and spirituality, its mystique. The prison pipeline is full to capacity in most urban communities. Have we taught, and I put taught in single quotation marks, our children to accept failure?
Yeah, we have. Because, like, I know here in St. Paul, a lot of our schools look like jails. And then now they want to talk about closing 5 schools, which is going to overcrowd our schools, which in jail we have an overcrowding. So all that, so we're teaching our kids how to do that. We're teaching our kids what kind of environment to be in. You know what I'm saying? Like that's why I'm kind of like mad about the SRO situation, because we have no structure for our children in the school system. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like something real bad is going to happen this school year because there's no safety or anything. We're just teaching our kids how to go out there and be crazy and do whatever they have to do to protect themselves or cause harm to somebody, over no reason at all. So yeah, we have failed our kids, with the entertainment that they hear and see and the rap music and the
It's no
video
different than
games
the
and
rap
everything.
music that was out before.
I
NWA
said,
was vicious compared to the people
it,
that we hear right now.
did I say there was a big difference? Or did I say the exposure that we're giving them? That
It's
we're
That's what I'm saying. There is no difference in the exposure, in
Well,
my opinion.
there is a
Dr.
big
Casey,
difference.
I'll give
There's
you
a big
a
difference.
final word
Look
on
on
that.
YouTube
Go
and
ahead,
see
Jennifer.
see what all is on YouTube. There's a big difference. So my thing is like everything that's going on, our kids have iPads, electronics, phones, everything that we didn't have.
I know I used to
So they're
watch
they're
porn when I was 10, 11 years old at night. So it's not that it was not there. It is very relevant. It has always been very prevalent. But it's what do you allow your children to watch? Do you
but
monitor
but when
what
you,
they do?
but when you was doing that, was you able to take it everywhere you went in your
It doesn't
pocket?
matter. Any type of
It does
exposure is
matter. It does
exposure.
matter.
No,
It does
I
matter.
don't agree.
They're overexposed. I don't understand like what the problem is saying that our kids are overexposed to stuff. Like there's a
I
limit.
don't think that
Like
failure,
if
teaching our
you if
children
you
about
if
failure
you
is a problem either.
if you
Well,
look
I'm gonna give you a chance to talk to answer that.
if you look on YouTube and all the videos that are on YouTube, there's even kids admitting that because they play Grand Theft Auto that they wanted to go steal cars. The little boy said, "I'll never shoot anybody, but I'll hit them with a gun." You know what I'm saying? I'll hit them, but I won't shoot them. All
Who
because of
buys
Grand
Grand
Theft
Theft
Auto.
Auto?
You just
But
said that stuff don't contribute to it. That's what I'm
Who
saying. We
buys
do,
it?
but
Who
that's what I'm
buys it?
saying. The parents do.
Okay,
So
period.
do we fail our children? Yes, we do. That's what I'm saying. Yes, we do fail our children because of what we give them, the devices that they have,
so,
everything that we do. When we don't check what they're into, when we don't explain to them the difference between fantasy and reality, we fail our children. When
but
we put
that
them
was
in the when
but
we
that
put them in
wasn't
these
the question
schools,
though. The question was, are we teaching our kids to be failures? Not are we failing our children, but are we teaching our? In other words, you know, just to, what you were saying, and also to go back to you there, Doctor. Like when I was a kid, I watched a lot of cowboy movies, and that fed my ambition to be a bank robber when I grew up. I never wanted to be a cop. I always wanted to be a guy with the black hat because he had all the fun. He got all the women and everything until he got caught. And I lived the same way until I got caught. Hey, I was willing to accept my circumstances, but eh, just like when you talk about these video games, hey, I lived my dreams because that's what I wanted to be. And that's what I was. And I was successful at it. So I lived my dreams. It wasn't your dreams. It wasn't the
all right.
dreams that my parents had for me, you know. And to them, I might have been a failure. But to me, even though I spent the time in jail or whatever, I was successful because I was able to accomplish what I set out to do. So, are we setting goals for our children to reach, or are we telling them, "Hey, if you bring, 3Ds and an incomplete home, it's all right. I'm cool with it," and send them back to school. So, once again, I'm saying, are we setting our kids up to accept failure?
Well, I think in that vein, as far as these wrong turns in life, I mean, these things and people finding their way until they realize that that iron's hot and not touch it anymore. I mean, those things are going to happen. But I think that those things should be an anomaly. This shouldn't be the norm in our societies where the gangs and this mentality has more pull and more say on our youth than the idea of going into business, going into education, going into service, going into anything other than just what I can take from somebody else. I mean, I think that those type of things, for whatever reasons, happens to people, but it should, to me, it should not be the norm. This should not be where all the kids now want to sag. All the kids now want to, the rap music, all the kids want to do this. I mean, okay, and I understand there's a youth thing and there's an old folks thing, and I guess I have to be considered one of the old people now. The youth have what the things they like for a young person, but as far as things that get them in trouble, that end up in the juvenile system, that end up in the court system, that end up, I mean, I think that's always going to happen, but I think people can learn from it. I believe that there is a thing called rehabilitation, or why are we even trying it if we don't believe it? So I just think we can't give up on our youth, and if we allow things to keep going like it is now, the way our schools are failing our kids, the way kids are coming out can't read, teenagers. My son is a high school teacher. He says, Dad, you'll never believe it. I got a kid. He just has to take one class. He's 20 years old. He won't take the class. He just stems in every now and then, fools around, and leaves. He won't do what he needs to do. This graduate, they don't see the importance of that anymore. They don't see the importance of graduating. First of all, I mean, that was just like kind of a no-brainer in the coming up. You're going to graduate from high school. And there were kids that didn't, but it wasn't very many. Very many.
I
Now you're
think
looking at a lot of kids like that can't get through school. A lot of them, and it's just becoming a broader issue to the erosion of our communities, and it's in every major city. You can look at it now. All these major cities look almost the same anywhere you go.
Yes, sir.
And
Go
see,
ahead.
it was either Crazy Bone or Lazy Bone from Crossroads has a YouTube, and he's got a podcast, and he said that the record label bought into the private prisons, and they changed the music, and they want them to get kids to shoot each other and do drugs and all this stuff. So
The record company wants to sell records. They don't care. It ain't about what we do to each other. The record company
oh,
wants to
oh
sell
no,
records.
no, I'm just saying that
My
he's
brother
in
but
the
they're
did the music
industry,
definitely
and he
business.
said
promoting
that.
that the violence is more catchy. It's almost like that show Squid Games. I watched it, but it was really gory. It was really a lot of backbiting. It was really a lot of I'm a do whatever. I'm gonna put you down. I'm gonna kill you. I'm gonna get you killed so I can come up. It was based on selfishness, and the
Right.
fact that it's number one speaks volumes.
Yes, it
Hmm.
does. Go
And
ahead, Doctor. Go ahead, Doctor Casey. I know you've been waiting a long
So
time. Go ahead.
some of it is when it comes to education, a lot of people don't see people that are educated as being successful. Success is based on an appearance based thing for a lot of people, especially in urban communities. So when you look at it, how many examples of high school graduated do you see that actually have good lives? A lot of people graduate high school and still struggle. So a person that is looking to see, well, what am I going to do with my life? If you see everybody that graduated from high school working like a slave, struggling, then that is not necessarily an encouraging factor. And depending on where you're coming from and the environment that you're witnessing it in, that plays a part in too. Like, I'm from Dayton, Ohio. There were a lot of factories when I grew up. So everybody aspired to work in GM. And when you have that type of environment, you don't think outside of what can I do outside of GM? What can I do outside of what's provided? That's the goal. And you don't need a diploma to go work at GM. You don't need a degree to go and get a lot of these jobs. So why am I staying in school? And it's doesn't make sense necessarily, but why am I staying in school or even going to get a degree when you see people with $50,000 loans that can't even find a job and what they get a degree in? They don't even use it. So it looks like a status quo to people that are amongst the status quo. But for people that are just in the hood, that's from the projects, that they trying to figure out how to get to the next step, the people that look successful are the people with the jury. The people that, and this is why people get jury or they get success and they start buying stupid shit. You buying 50, you got 100
You know,
pair worth of shoes.
some of the reason for that though is that my grandfather lived in Detroit, and so my dad was from Chicago, and so
That's a different thing.
every summer,
Your
every summer,
dad, I guarantee you, I never knew your dad, but I guarantee you, your dad didn't have 100 pair of sneakers in his house.
no, but I'll say this: every
Whether they was named Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, or whatever.
no, but every summer I spent a week or so, 2 weeks in Chicago, 2 weeks in Detroit. And in Detroit, my grandfather worked was a supervisor on the Chrysler assembly line. In Detroit, in those days, if you didn't have a new car, you were nobody because everybody worked in the auto thing. A lot of
Mm-hmm,
people were coming
mm-hmm,
up from down south to work in the auto thing. That's the same thing in Ohio, same thing,
Of course,
all
yeah.
those places. But see, all those things don't exist anymore. I
mm-hmm.
mean, all
And
those type of good paying jobs where you could come in there, you didn't even have to have no high school degree. You could come in there up there from down south and you wanted to work, you could work in those auto plants. You'd have a new car. Detroit was really something in those days. Those opportunities were there, but they're all gone now. All the they sent a lot of this stuff over to
See,
Japan. They sent a lot of the cars
oh,
made. All of these
oh,
things that were there right for the taking are all gone.
hold on. See, because as I told you, when they passed the three-strike law, I already had four strikes. The only thing I knew was the streets, and I had to find a way for me to make a living and still use the talents that I had. So I became a chef. That way I knew I always had something to eat. I could use my creative skills, and I didn't, nobody asked me about my past. As long as I could cook, I could make things taste good, and I could make them look good. Okay. And it fulfilled everything that I was doing on the streets. I got money. I wasn't in a box. I could make my own creativity. I could design my own place. I could create my own menus. The only thing I had to do was a thing called adapt. That's all I had to do.
Yeah.
And if I could do that at the age of, let's see, I think I was 34 when I got out of prison. And I've been doing my thing ever since. When I got older, I love sports. So I got on the internet. I created me a sports show. I got into boxing. I got on the internet. I created me a boxing show. All these things fed the same energy that I had in the street, the same drive that I had in the street. Like I said, it was
it's
just a
about
matter of
learning
adapting. There you go.
productive
Yeah. Yeah.
alternatives. A lot of times there are no alternatives, but I think when it comes to I think failure is not a bad thing. I think that we need to teach our children how to fail, because you can learn a lot from failure. A lot of people learn more in failure and in doing wrong, not doing wrong, having bad experiences where they can learn from those experiences. But where we fail our youth is not communicating, not telling them our stories, not telling them what we've been through, not, and covering up generational curses, covering up pain and trauma, covering up abuse and all of these things. And because we don't talk about it, they don't have a basis of where they feel they could trust us, where they can learn from us, and where they feel like they have somebody to talk to. So if I'm going through something, like when I used to go through something, I didn't have nobody to talk to. I was, trying to figure out life for myself on my own. But when I had those people that were willing to talk to me about life, whether it was sex, whether it was relationships or whatever, that helped me learn things that I didn't have to necessarily go through. But because so often we're ashamed of our stories and we only tell the glorified versions of our testimony, we don't people get married and they think that marriage is supposed to be all peaches and cream, but nobody says that grandpa and grandma went through this in order to keep their marriage. They had to go through and overcome these different things. Everybody is so quick to throw away and put things away versus working towards fixing problems. But that only comes through communication and being able to have conversations.
Well, that's what I try to provide this platform for, and I'm thankful to everybody for coming on. It's amazing, I how quick 2 hours goes by. So everybody comes on and says, "Well, I can't talk for that long." Yeah, well, you get on, and then all of a sudden, the time flies by. But I like to talk about interesting problems. I invite all of you to come back on whenever you want. Uh, Next week, I will be finishing up this series, and Doctor, I have a series next month that you might be interested in. It's called "Do Black Conservatives?" Well, are Black conservatives the porters on the train of racial inequality? So you might want to talk about it. you might, you might
Conservative.
yeah, yeah. There's a few terms you might not know, ratchets and things like that. And I'm not talking about riches, Mr. John, Mr. Scott. But anyway, uh, let's get everybody's final thoughts. And I know you guys are all on a different time zone. I'm out here in California. I can go another 2 hours. It's only 8 o'clock to me. So I know. Jennifer, you and Mr. Scott, it's what, about 10 o'clock there, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
well, it might be the same thing. You said, where'd you say you were at, Doctor?
I am in Atlanta. It's 11.
Okay, so yeah, so everybody's ready to go home with me. All right, Jennifer, why don't you give us your final thoughts first, then Mr. Scott, and we'll give you the last word, Dr. Katz.
I just wanted to say, Dr. Casey, I think that a lot of that stuff that you was just talking about with like marriages and stuff, I think a lot of people get married because they think they're in love, but they don't really know each other. But then once they get married, the real true sides come out and they just don't know what to do. But yeah, just I just really enjoyed this show, this topic. And I am running for St. Paul School Board, so check out my website, votejenmcpherson.org.
And did you, is there anywhere else? Are you giving any events or anything? I know you're in
Oh,
St. Paul. Would you say St. Paul or you in Minneapolis?
St. Paul.
Okay.
So I am running a organization, Community Bridge Committee, and we're doing a community conversation on Saturday at Dayton's Bluff from 2 to 4. And then on the 16th, I am organizing a meet me at 360, which is the school district 360 Coburn. So we could be there rally during the school closure shutdowns. So they're going to vote on November 16th. So we're going to rally to be there.
All right, Mr. Scott.
Well, I want to wish Jennifer good luck with that. You're right here in my neighborhood, and I'm familiar with all these things in St. Paul as I've worked for the state of Minnesota for years and Hennepin County. And I just, James, thanks for having me on the show. I enjoyed talking to your guests. And with everything that's gone on up here with George Floyd and all the things that are in our country right now, I think having a dialogue between us and between men and women that can really share thoughts and share ideas about what we think about our families, relationships, and it doesn't have to be anything other than family type talk, where I'm talking to you like you are my sister and my brother. So I like the forum. Thank you for inviting me, and maybe you'll invite me back, James. I don't know. Your team's not doing that great. I don't know if you take it personal, but
Hey, look here. Right now my team is 3-3, and
so
that's a
is
whole
I.
lot. That's a whole lot better than I thought we were going to be at this particular time. But
You
I
got to take
will,
it you can get. Okay.
hey, but I will say this: whether you like him or not, we have the best coach in the NFL.
And he'll be there as long as he has a winning season. If he doesn't have a winning season,
He out of
He,
there.
well,
that's what they do.
he's not gonna have one this year, and he's not gonna have one next year.
You sound like a Vikings fan.
No. Look, I've been playing football since I was 7.
Mm-hmm.
Every team that I've ever played with wore black and yellow. So and I'm
It's
74.
the colors.
And,
No, it's the colors.
no. Even if you notice, even in the army, the colors are black and gold. So
He played Wiz Khalifa all the time.
Right. That's his favorite song.
So to me, and I, you talk about Dayton. I was born in Youngstown, Ohio.
Oh,
I'm
really?
Yes, I'm 65 miles from Cleveland. I'm 68 miles from Pittsburgh. Cleveland hadn't won nothing when I was born. Okay.
I don't have nothing to say because I live in Atlanta and the Falcons are horrible.
Okay, so
the Falcons are horrible. They can't win a season if it was handed to them. The last one, they'll blow it. I don't know. I don't know what's going on with the Falcons.
And the only thing I have to say to you, Mr. Scott, 6. Okay, I'm done. All right. How many Vikings?
That kind of hurt. I mean, you ain't got to go personal. I ain't do nothing.
Necessary.
Dr. Casey, get us out of here.
So the last thing that I would say is that definitely, Mr. Scott and Jennifer, I really agree on a lot of things. It seems like we have a lot of differences in our conversation, but it really is a matter of perspective and experience, because everybody's experience contributes differently. However, knowing the different experiences is how we collectively grow together, because this conversation, it may not register any new thoughts today, but maybe 5 months down the line you might remember something that was said that would be impactful. Now, if you guys want to follow me, you can follow me on Instagram at Speaking Freedom, and I have a YouTube channel with where I'm releasing content. Whatever you have, James, I really enjoyed this conversation. I like talking to everybody. Mr. Scott, I love, what you had to input about being from the South, because the South is totally different than being from Ohio. It is a totally different experience. But the different experiences are the things that shape me the most and make me the well-rounded individual that I am. I learn from these experiences and conversations, and it takes my mind a little bit further. So I appreciate you all.
Well, I will be sending everybody an invitation, so you can come next week if you want. It's an open forum. Come whenever you want. I remain who I am. I don't change. So, come on back. We'll have fun. We'll talk. We'll disagree. But hey, that's what it's all about. Everybody have a great night. Everybody have a good night, and we'll talk again next Monday.
All right, see ya.
Thank you.
Take care.